Managing Director, Galaxy Digital, Canada. We have Nithin, Eapen, Chief Investment Officer, Arcadia Crypto Ventures, Siri Srinivas, Investor at Draper Associates, and Zhang, CEO of Huobi, Canada. I think I covered everyone. Our topic today is the future of capital markets, and I can imagine multiple ways to discuss that topic, but we're going to link it back today to blockchain, of course. And the first question I would like to ask, and it's a nice starting point for everyone here on the panel, what do you think will be the most transformational element that blockchain is going to bring to capital markets? And it's high level, it's open, it's wide, so but it's going to be your view as an expert on what is going to be the biggest element. Can I start with you, Andrew?
Sure, thanks, Jos. So, you know, when you look to the future of capital markets, I think I sort of view it in two different ways. So number one is, how can blockchain be used to make capital markets more efficient, and you know, that continues to evolve, but one of the ways might be things such as a settlement of stock trading, which used to be, you know, the time of the transaction plus 3 days has moved to 2 days, but maybe it should be, you know, time of the transaction plus 10 minutes. So that might be one of the ways in terms of implementing blockchain, the ability to do things on a much faster level.
Yeah, I am totally with you on that one. I think that is one of the biggest items that will release value to the industry, efficiency, cost savings, and most importantly, if you can settle that quickly, it releases a lot of capital.
Yeah, and so I don't have the exact source for this, but from my experience, the reason it used to take T plus 3 days to settle a transaction is there's just infinite amounts of paperwork that occurs every time a stock is bought or sold in the capital markets, and it would take 3 days basically for the financial institution to get its stuff together to get the transaction to consummate and the sure certificates crossed. And so in moving all this to electronic form via blockchain, and also that process was costing billions of dollars a year for that 3-day settlement. If you can get it to be electronic and settle in 10 minutes, there's probably also huge savings that can be passed on to consumers.
Yeah. Nithin.
When I look at the blockchain, I think the biggest thing that has happened for capital markets or raising money, that's where I look at it, okay? The efficiency that Andrew spoke about is very key when you look at the back end. But for me is the ability to raise money. So earlier, there were only a few set of people who could take part in the money raise process in the beginning stage. So you had the VCs or the bankers who could be involved. With Ethereum, for example, and the fact that you can make tokens and do ICOs, what has happened is you can, as a founder, you can quickly raise money, and as an investor, you can invest in smaller amount from anywhere in the world. So that is very transformational. You know, that itself is very big from the money raise perspective. And as Andrew said, you know, from blockchain using in each industry, there's so many other things on the trading side, on the reconciliation side. Yes.
Yeah. So Ross, I think we hear one, efficiencies in the way that capital markets are working. I think that is what Andrew was more focusing on, which can liberate lots of savings, liberate a lot of capital. I think that Nithin is telling us about how you can leverage new ways of raising capital. What is for you the big transformational element that blockchain is going to bring to that industry?
Yeah, I think, so in general, like my perspective is blockchain is solving two problems in the financial markets. One is the trust issues, right? So for example, you know, if the institutional investors wants to deal with each other, the counterparty risk is pretty high. You know, it's like a considerable factor. But like with the blockchain, right, we have the consensus mechanism to solve that trust issues. And also, you know, for example, like I know like a lot of companies that are using the blockchain technologies to do all the settlement for the back office work, right? That saves a lot of time and effort and all the legal paperwork. So another problem I think blockchain is solving is the transfer of the value, right? So for example, if we are sending some money like back to the home country, for example, it may take like 2 or 3 days. So that involves a lot of paperwork, lots of like a settlement, like different ledgers across like different banks, right? So if you use like a Bitcoin or other cryptos to transfer that value right now on the internet, that's making the capital flow like more efficient. And of course, we're seeing like lots of ways to raise new capitals, right? So we see like ICOs or the security token offerings, right? So that is based on the fundamental principle of the problem of the solution that blockchain provides.
Thank you. Well, that brings us to you, Frans, and I'll ask you to expand on this, but I would maybe also ask you to add a dimension to it, so that if you have the same thoughts as the other three, so you can add a little bit of a dimension to it. What is the biggest hurdle to achieve that?
Okay, I first want to add sort of the two areas that I see as most transformational, which, I mean, I agree with what's been said before, but I want to add two. One is we can create way more different investment vehicles using blockchain. We can make, does it still work? Yeah. We can make revenue streams liquid as a security, and we can create a lot more different things that today are hard to become a security. We can make those into security using blockchain and tokens. That's one. Then second, I also think, and some panelists earlier today have spoken about it, I do think we're going to see different business models evolve. Because as we can use tokens as part of our business model somehow, whether they're securities or some kind of utility within a platform, all legal obviously, I do think we're going to see other ways by which blockchain is going to change those markets. The biggest hurdles for me are, let's say when we're thinking about, it's going to be about adoption. Adoption falling in two ways. One is regulators becoming comfortable with tokenized securities. Even though we're following all of the securities regulations in some offerings, regulators still want to have a higher touch and a higher process with everything that's tokenized. And the other thing is liquidity. I think we're still quite early in this whole market, and yeah, people have to get comfortable with this new asset class.
Thank you. Siri, you must be seeing quite a few opportunities that pass by in front of you, and when you look at that from a capital markets perspective, does it align with what you just heard before? Are those the where you see the big opportunities and the big developments taking place today? Or do you see something totally different?
I agree with pretty much everything that's been said. These are all things that we see various companies solving different aspects of the problem. But personally, one of the things that I'm most excited about is I spent a little bit of time as a personal finance reporter at The Guardian, and the biggest takeaway was you'll be surprised how little retail investors actually know about their options. In a market like the US, where access is fairly open, very few people really understand the capital markets. And I mean, mom and pop investors, regular individual investors. Now, if you can compound that by the barriers that geography sometimes applies to this problem. I'm Indian, I have family in Europe, I live and work in the US. I was having a conversation about buying stock with family in Europe, and you'll be surprised how difficult it is to open a brokerage account and to just buy a share in something. I could do it right now on my phone because I have a US bank account, and back home in India, I actually have to go to the bank and spend 30 minutes and fill out a form just to be able to move $500 to the US. So the part that's most exciting for me is how decentralized networks and new forms of investments and new securities and new assets can actually really level the playing field globally. And I think that consumer investing products that make this happen for people around the world can be massive.
So, thank you very much for that. So one of the things that I didn't hear, when I talk about, well, you use the word, of course, assets, but when we talk about blockchain, we always think immediately also about cryptocurrency, even though I would consider it as being two very different things, but we talk about that. And none of you really raised cryptocurrency. Is that something transformational for the capital markets? Is that an asset? Is that an asset that we should invest in, or should we not invest in it? Frans, what are your thoughts about that? You've got a few of those, I think, now.
Yeah, we as a company we do, and personally I do as well. I mean, I do believe it's a new asset class, and I think, let's say, when we're talking about capital markets, I do believe that this is going to be one of the categories within the capital markets that people are going to play in. So then we can go into all of the different cryptocurrencies out there, and I do believe that many of them will have specific investment cases why people might want to hold them and might not want to. We do see many large institutional players solving some of the barriers around custody and index products and other things that are probably going to come out over, let's say, the next 6 to 12 months. I do believe strongly that it is going to be an institutional and an investment class, and that means it's also an investment class for everyone else.
Yeah, a study came out, a couple of days ago from Greenwich. So they are doing studies amongst institutional investors, and 70%, and it's a pretty well-established organization on the buy side, 70% of the respondents were convinced that it would be an asset class and something that they would consider. Still 15% said it's going to disappear soon. I think it's more a hope than a reality, probably. But Ross, what is your view on that? What would be your recommendations to someone who is looking at that world? Think about the presentation we had from Bloomberg earlier today, if you saw it, who was going through 10, 20 different types of cryptocurrencies. How should investors look at that? How should they look at those opportunities? Just buy?
Yeah, well, I think there are like different players in the market right now. So as of today, so most of the market participants are still like speculators, like most of them. So they speculate on the price fluctuations, but at the same time, we see the regulators are catching up with the new regulations coming, and also we're seeing lots of companies are focusing on building the infrastructure. For example, like a custody service for the institutional investor to come. So I think like down the road, as we all know, there are much more monies like sitting on the line. They just don't know what to do because of volatility, lack of regulation, lack of custody service, right? So once we figure like those things out, and then that's where the institutional investor will come to play. And actually, according to our like research, we already see a lot of like hedge funds and the quant traders, they're already like doing the arbitrage because of the market volatility right now. It's like the financial or the capital markets back in the 90s, right? So when the price like fluctuated so much, and actually when the institutional investors come into play, then you won't be able to see like a lot of like arbitrage opportunities. Actually, I think that's a good time if you want to do that investment. And if you are like a long-term investment, if you are a long-term investor, actually this is a good time as well because it's a bear market. So that's for you to, to have your position, to get the beta, for example, from the Huobi 10 index.
Lots of speculation definitely took place last year, but maybe Nithin, ask you a question, because I assume you must also see a lot of opportunities passing by. What do you invest in? Blockchain solutions or cryptocurrencies, or both?
Sure. Very easy. We don't invest in blockchain solutions because I don't believe in this whole blockchain thing. I'm a total crypto maximalist. We believe in Bitcoins and Ethereums and all those kind of things. And for the question whether it's an asset class, for any investor, I would say is, look at the charts. You have a thing that was $1 in 2010, and it's 8 years, it's at 6,000, okay? In between it went up many times, it came down multiple times, 90% drawdowns. But when you draw that long-term chart, you have something which was 1 or 10 cents, it's still at 6,000, despite the fact you can say that it went to 20, came down to 6. even if you're an investor, or if you're even private personal investor, if you have $100, if you had just put $5 into Bitcoin at any point in that time, except when you did it at Jan 2018, you're pretty much up. And your whole portfolio is changing. Let's say you started early, you heard about this, even if it was 2013 and you started early when it was $100. The shift in your portfolio is big. I'm not saying that you should go and invest every penny into it. That's what I did. I invested everything I had into it. But you should be willing to take that chance, because otherwise, how do you know? You want to wait for it to become 100,000 till you believe that this is an asset class? Some people have argued with me that it doesn't provide dividends. Well, I asked them this question: do you buy gold? They said for the people who say they don't buy gold, I asked them, have you heard of big funds buying gold? If somebody is buying gold, it's an asset class. If it has a price in the market, it is an asset by definition. If it is going up or going down, it is an asset, and you should be involved in it, at least in a small way, at least 5 to 10% of your portfolio. And me, yes, I'm always into everything that's a cryptocurrency or the utility token. I'm not into security tokens or any of those things yet, because the markets are not there.
I'm going to move to you, Siri, just to expand on those statements. Are you a cryptocurrency maximalist, or and you don't believe in blockchain at all, or are you in between?
So I work in venture capital. The horizon that we invest in is usually 7 years. 7 years is very quick for us to make money. So we're in this for the long run. And the reason when I'm on this panel, or VCs are interested in be it cryptocurrencies or blockchains or crypto protocols, is because this is in our business. It's technology. We are very comfortable with things not having a dollar value for a very long time. As long as it has utility, it has use, and it's changing the world, people want it. We're in the business of figuring out how something can be valuable in dollar terms. So I'm not sure I feel comfortable with calling myself a crypto maximalist in any way. Plenty of times we see a lot of currencies that shouldn't even exist. With our frameworks, when we meet with companies, what we're really trying to understand is how useful this can be, and if this will really have a massive impact in what it's trying to do, and the fact that it can be monetized comes much later, and we're okay with that.
Yeah. So Andrew, I think we have two different views over here. What's your view on that?
So I think everybody should, as part of their portfolio, hold at least 1 to 2% of their portfolio in something that has cryptocurrency exposure. And based on what Hut 8 does, as the largest Bitcoin miner in Canada and one of the largest in North America, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. When I look at all of the other cryptocurrencies out there, I think there's ways for people to profit and make money through those with a lot of research and work. But I have almost very little interest in that, because I feel with any other of the cryptocurrencies, when they have a function or a utility, something else can come in and replace those. So, for example, Ethereum is a fantastic tool, but it's had its hardships, especially this year, and as new products come in that can replace Ethereum, you can put a question mark over the future of Ether in its current state. So there's Ether 0.2, 0.3 that are being worked on. Bitcoin, in its simplicity and in its size, is impossible to replace. I mean, it's just so big, and to me, it's a digital gold, and I think everybody should have a small piece of exposure to Bitcoin in their portfolio, which is why we created Hut 8, to provide people that opportunity in a very easy, mainstream way.
Thank you. Ross, let's maybe move to securities, tokenization, ICOs, and all those kind of things. I mentioned earlier that I'm a very big believer that is going to happen, and that the space in which I am is going to look very differently tomorrow. Now, it may be interesting for the people here in the audience to explain what is the difference between an ICO and an STO.
So Okay, I think that's based on the nature of the underlying like tokens or the coins. So for the ICO, you basically like issue a new like a coin that's served as utility tokens for most of the time, and for the security token offering, like it has a security nature, right? So so it's based on like different nature of your underlying coins or underlying assets.
So one is one more a currency, the other one more an asset. Yeah, Frans.
Well, just to add that it has two components. One is the function of the token itself, but also the regulations underlying it. So so many regulatory bodies are still trying to figure out whether there actually is such a thing as utility tokens. And some jurisdictions have been quite clear and say, no, we have utility tokens, payment tokens, and security tokens, and things that are in between, and we as a regulator will actually tell you which one it falls into. So this is where some of the early panels were about regulatory arbitrage, and that's why this is a global phenomenon, and I think that's important for everyone to realize. And that was also said earlier in terms of there's just way more fluidity across the world in terms of capital flows. I think both can be assets. I think the main issue so far with utility token is that so far there is no real example within the utility token space of people that have actually been able to value the utility portion of the token. So the value of many of these projects has been speculative, and I think that's where the issues are. Then we spent quite a lot of time thinking about that. Like, if a project does a utility token, at what point does utility take over, and how is that managed? And I think we will see development where the normal ICO, as we've seen it in 2017 and earlier this year, will probably morph into something that will manage better the speculative nature vis-a-vis the utility that people are actually trying to create.
Thank you. I think we're pretty much out of time. 25 minutes. It's not very long for a panel of 5 and what is a very big topic. But I would like to end with a maybe one funny question, coming back to who I'm going to go for. Ross. I'm going to go for Ross. So that's the most logical one. Ross, when you look at the future of tokenized securities, I think we have all a clearly good view about what that is and the hurdles that we still need to overcome to achieve that, but we can all see the benefits of it. Who is going to be the winners tomorrow? The established exchanges or the cryptocurrency exchanges?
It's a fantastic question. So I think that will be the trend we're seeing right now is the merge of these two things together. So like the cryptocurrency exchange wants to tap into a traditional territory that the traditional stock exchange, the security exchange that's in. And also at the same time, we're saying the traditional security exchange, they want to tap into the cryptocurrency exchange, right? So I wouldn't say who will win over each other. I would see that will be a merge, either the entity from the cryptocurrency exchange or a separate entity from the traditional security exchange. That will be a mix of those two. So I think that's the trend we're observing right now.
So